Hello, everyone. Wanted to take a couple minutes and kind of talk to you about the lab activity that you're going to be doing with the dialysis tubing. And if you've never worked with dialysis tubing, just want to give you a little bit of background information on it. The first thing is before you attempt to do the lab, you want to take the section of dialysis tubing and you want to soak it for a good 10 to 15 minutes before you try to do anything with it. What dialysis tubing is it's set up and designed to be very much like structures you would see inside the human body. So like blood vessels and your kidneys and nephrons and things like that that are able to diffuse material back and forth across the membrane. That's what your dialysis tubing is set up to work like. So even though it looks like it is a solid piece of tubing, within the plastic, there are actually these tiny little pores, just like there would be in these internal structures that you guys have. And if material is small enough, it can actually pass through those pores. So if it's on the inside of dialysis tubing and it's small enough, it can move out. And if there's something on the outside of the dialysis tubing that is small enough, it can then move into dialysis tubing. So it's a structure or material that we use to replicate things and functions that happen inside the human body. And in this particular case, we're using the dialysis tubing to simulate what would happen inside a functioning kidney. Now, with the dialysis tubing, one thing that I want to tell you right off the bat, I gave you more than you're actually going to need. So the length that I cut you was quite a bit. And the reason that I did that is because dialysis tubing is not the easiest material to work with. And that's why I'm having you soak it to start the process. The ends of the dialysis tubing, because of how it is put on the roll, they kind of get sealed. And so the soaking will help soften up the tubing and it will make it a little bit easier to pry open so that you can get material inside the tube. Now, both ends of the tubing are going to essentially be open. So what you want to do is pick one end of the tubing and work at that and see if you can get it open. If not, you can flip it to the other end and see if you can get that open. And then once you have an open end, if you want to kind of cut it down from there, you can. But I gave you excess because sometimes there are little tricks that we have to use to get the dialysis tubing to open up so we can actually use it. Probably one of the easiest things to do is once you have the dialysis tubing soaked for that 10 to 15 minutes, don't shortcut it. Going overboard is going to be much better than trying to do it for just a couple minutes and getting the tubing to work. But once you take it out, pick one of the ends, and then you want to lick your fingers and just lick your forefinger and your thumb and put them on either side of dialysis tubing and just rub your fingers back and forth and see if you can get a little pocket started. Sometimes you can use the same approach you would use to opening like a bag of chips where you would grab both sides and kind of try and pry it open that way. Again, there's no right or wrong way to doing this as long as you get it open. Some other techniques that we've had to use is if you want to do a diagonal cut of the tubing. So right now it's pretty much straight across. You can take a pair of scissors and do a diagonal cut and get kind of a 45-degree angle and then go back to the forefinger and the thumb approach, trying to work that back and forth and getting it open. But like I said, it is very stubborn material and we'll try your patience. Some people will get it within a couple minutes. Some people will have to work at it for a while. So the excess tubing that I gave you is if you're working with a section and it's just not going anywhere, like I said, you can flip to the other end and try that. But if you've been working at an end for a while, you can go ahead and cut it completely and just get to a new section and see if that helps. The one thing that you want to keep in mind with the dialysis tubing, and this is another reason I gave you a little bit of excess, is because there are pores and openings in that plastic tubing that are meant to allow material to diffuse back and forth across it. If you are handling it too much with your fingers, and I realize on the ends you're going to have to, but you want to refrain from holding the tubing through the main length of it because the oil that you guys have on your fingertips will actually clog and block those openings. So if that happens, you're going to alter how much material is going to be able to diffuse back and forth across that dialysis tubing. and it will impact your results in the end. So try to handle just the ends of it. And like I said, if you need to cut stuff away and restart, that is fine as well. If you are really struggling, then you can re-soak it for a little bit longer. Like I said, 10 to 15 minutes is kind of our starting point that we use. But if we need to go back and do it longer, we will do that. You can open it. Like I said, it might be a little bit trying, but it will open. We've done labs with this every single year, and it's a tough process, but once you get it, obviously, then you're good to go. Once you get a opening started, what I would suggest is you guys have the pipettes. Take the bulb end of the pipette, not the part where you would actually have fluid leave the pipette, but take the dull bulb side and put that down into the dialysis tubing to get it to open up. If you use a pair of scissors or something with a sharp edge, you run the risk of poking through the dialysis tubing, and then you get to start the process all over again. So take something that's going to be dull and use that and push that down into the dialysis tubing to expand it and get it fully opened once you get it started. Now, you also have the clips that I have put in there, and the clips are used to secure the ends of the dialysis tubing. Now, what you can do with this is you can turn the end of the dialysis tubing, and then you kind of want to take the end and flip it up as well. So twist it and then roll it back over and then put your clip on, just to make sure that you're not going to have anything leaking out the end of it. As you put your fluid in to the dialysis tubing, it doesn't call for a huge amount of fluid. Like I said, I gave you way more than what you need, just so if you had to do some cutting away and you had to retry, that you had enough length to actually do it. So once you get your fluid in, you can resize your dialysis tubing. If you need to cut it way down at that point in time, that is fine. Please do not feel like you have to leave the entire length of dialysis tubing throughout the lab activity. Once you cut it down, then go ahead and on the other end, twist it, fold it down, clamp it. If you are struggling with dialysis clamps, they're not holding, they're not working. And again, I gave you extras. You only need 2. I believe I put 4 in each kit. But if they're just not working for you, you can do a simple knot. And if that works for you, that is perfectly fine. If you have string and you want to use string to tie it off, that works as well. The reason that we use the clamps is because with the clamps, it gives you the most secure tie off to the dialysis tubing, just to make sure that you're not going to get any fluid leaking out the ends or coming back in. But again, if it is struggling for you and it's just not working, there are other methods that you can go to, and that's just fine. Just please make sure before you start the process that the dialysis tubing is not leaking, and it tells you how to do that in the directions for the lab activity. So once you get your materials all set up, the rest of the directions I feel are pretty self-explanatory. You do have a salt test strip that is in your kit. And again, you have a white strip on the test strip, and then there's a small little color square on the end. Just like with the dialysis tubing, on that colored square, you don't want to touch it with your fingers. So when you guys pull it out of the bag, make sure that you are handling it anywhere on the white, but do not take your fingers and actually grab onto the square itself. Again, your oils from your hands will clog that up, and it will not give you an accurate reading when you do that part. So I know I spent a lot of time on the dialysis tubing, but that is by far going to be the biggest challenge in the lab activity. If you have any questions about the rest of the directions for the lab activity, you are more than welcome to send those to me, and I will help you with those and answer those for you. I tried to hit the biggest things that I think might be problematic through the lab, but the directions with this particular one, if there's anything else that pops up that you need further explanation for, just send me an email and I will get that taken care of for you. As always, with the end of the lab activity, please just snap a picture of the lab sheets and send those to me.